Yeah, and we can have an extension of Envoy AI down here too. You're always welcome to
Denver office.
Exactly. Cool. So I think we're ready to get started. So obviously very excited to have, in my opinion, I believe KJ's opinion, one of the leaders in the founding space within logistics and then freight tech and now AI in Robert Nathan. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah.
Robbie, thank you for making the trip down to our studio. I know it was probably at least 45, 50 minutes, so I know you're busy, but thank you so much for coming down. Your entrepreneur journey has been across a few different things. It seems like the thread is logistics, but where did your entrepreneur spark start?
So it's not that exciting. I started on the loading docks when I was 14 years old. During the summertime, I would load trucks. I would count fasteners. It was for a small distribution company that my father had. And we were sorting screws, shipping them all over Chicago. And that was how I learned about businesses. I'd pull up at a dock, and some would be small companies, some would be big. And all those companies were producing a different product. Mm-hmm. And that was my sort of entryway into entrepreneurial activity and understanding that if you have an idea, you could build a product, sell it, distribute it, and make the world a better place.
So you work for your dad in the summers, is that right?
Yes, and I don't know if that still happens these days.
Yeah.
By the way, I saw your daughter that's working, here and spending some time, which I think is great. More people need to send their kids to work. And, there's different ideas of what type of work. And, I think there's there's just a lot of value that comes from real work and communicating to real people. Everyone's talking about AI, but I think we need to bring the kids back to the office.
I agree, totally.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we're going to touch on this a little bit later on as we talk, but you've got 2 young boys. I've got a daughter that's 1.5. Is there anything that you're doing with them to help kind of make sure that they're getting that work ethic? Because I would love to learn and make sure that I'm instilling that in my kid too.
So similar to being a CEO, everything you do in front of your children, you're modeling. They're watching. They want to know what you're doing. Even if you think they're not watching, they are. And the same thing in business. When you're a CEO of a big company, people are watching what you're doing, how you're speaking. And so I just think the practice of understanding that your children are not just going to do what you say, but they're going to do what you do. And that's just something that I think is really important as I parent.
Yeah.
So when your kids might pop in a Zoom call or whatnot, I think that's great. I think people should smile about that versus not being happy about that.
I mean, in the end, we're dealing with people. Life happens. You're going to have your kid pop in there. So I 100% agree. But backtracking to when you were working over the summers, that's obviously within the logistics space. Was there something that when you were doing that, you knew you wanted to go into logistics, or you knew 100% that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Was there any kind of aha moment doing that?
So no one wakes up and says, I want to be in logistics. But just like we teach, our kids and model, you have to be problem solvers. And when you think about logistics, it's all about solving problems. Mm-hmm. It's all about solving problems faster, decreasing latency, coming up with viable solutions.
Yeah. And was there the interesting dynamic of working with your dad? So I had the pleasure of doing that. My father owns an architecture firm, and I was doing similar things, just trying to help clear whatever it was when I was growing up. Did you like that dynamic of working together?
So this was back in the day before there was Waze, before Google Maps.
Yeah.
So there was only MapQuest. And so you'd have to print out MapQuest, and I'd be driving around the inner city of Chicago. And when I'd get lost, I'd have to call my dad.
Yeah.
And so not only did I fail the mission, not going from point A to point B, I'd have to, and in some cases, I didn't have a cell phone at the time. So I'd have to get out of the car and go into a gas station and ask people and problem solve. And sometimes I'd have to call my dad and whip out the Rand McNally.
Well, that's something we all share in commonality as well. I worked for my dad. It was a linen company. So if you go to a nice restaurant, the chef coats, the chef hats, it was founded in 1926. And so my job at 13 was to go wash the trucks on the weekends. So you imagine like a UPS-sized truck. So I'm from Tacoma, Washington. So it didn't matter if it snowed, it rained, whatever it was, I had to wash the trucks. And I think they paid me $55 a week.
Hey, at least you're still earning some income.
And you asked the question about working for your father. Maybe not my favorite thing, because I felt like most of my life I was his employee. He had 4 sons, so but definitely taught me hard work.
Yeah. It's a similar thing with me. It's like, I think that the experience was so phenomenal. I love my dad to death. Him and I see things very differently. And I by no means have the entrepreneurial spirit like you, but I was always telling him, like, you should be able to do this or do this a little bit differently. So I always like to see how that dynamic works.
Now, in terms of dads, the biggest gift that he gave me was not teaching me how to work or letting me work for him. It was not allowing me to work for him after college. And I wanted to. I thought I could make his business so much better and we could grow it. And he said, you need to go do your own thing. We don't believe in nepotism in this family.
Yeah.
And go out and make your own way. And so at 22, I had to figure it out myself.
I love that. And I definitely want to touch on that here in a second. But if we're taking one step back, so worked with your dad, understanding the logistics space, driving a truck, you decided on CU Boulder. Why did you decide to come to school out here? Why philosophy? Like, what made you kind of venture out?
So,
were there other schools that you were looking at besides Boulder?
yes, my mother is still not happy with me that I got into many other schools that might have had a better reputation from an academic institution perspective, but I wanted to go to Boulder. I love the mountains. I thought it'd be a great lifestyle, 300 days of sun. And that was where I made the decision. Now, why to study philosophy? I wanted to read. I wanted to write. I wanted to learn about systems. And at the time, it was called social policy and values. So I was really interested in how do we make the world a better place. Now, I didn't know later on that making the world a better place through logistics was possible.
Yeah.
But I do think that the operators that have stayed in this industry the longest fundamentally believe that we are helping to make the world just a little better by whether it's technology or a service or by bringing on great teams.
Was there any type of like a specific professor that said something profound to you that made you change away from philosophy and go back to business, or is there like a theme that, or there's something you learned there that still sticks with you to this day?
So the theme that sticks with me was I know that I don't know. It was the greatest paradox. It was a Socratic, Socrates used to say it, which was, I know that I don't know. And when we think about business, we're testing ideas and concepts that we think we know, but we need to actually test them in the laboratory and see if they're actually create ROI. So I think that's what stuck with me. Why did I go into business? Well, very hard to make money as a modern day philosopher. I tried to when I was 22. I spent some time overseas in China, and then when I got back to the United States, it was either philosophy, which was not easy to generate income, or go into the wide world of logistics. So was fortunate to get my first start at a company called AFN, and that's where I learned the industry.
Interesting. And definitely want to learn about AFN too, but I didn't actually know that you had the opportunity to go abroad and go over to China after school. What were you doing there?
I'm not at liberty to say.
Okay. Yeah, China is definitely a crazy place. So AFN, how did you then end up in AFN? And again, going back to what you were saying before, couldn't work with your dad. Like, what made you really want to get into the logistics space, or did it just fall into your lap?
Can I interject a quick question?
Yeah.
Like, how did you apply online, or like, how did you look at other brokerages or other types of companies?
So this is interesting. So I remember being 22 years old. I came back from China, and I got on Career Builder.
Yeah.
And no one emailed me back. I didn't get any emails, and I didn't know what to do. And so I'd heard that there was this thing called freight brokerage, and there was this legend called Paul Loeb. And Paul Loeb lived in a town just north of Chicago, and I happened to grow up in that town. And so I'd heard about logistics. And Paul not just created American Backhaulers and really is the godfather of modern day freight brokerage, but he spawned this ecosystem in the northern suburbs of Chicago that created, I'd say, 20 plus CEOs of top 200 3PLs. So it was it was sort of by default, maybe by where I lived, that I just gravitated towards logistics, walked on the floor at AFN, and 2 days later had a role.
I love it. We were talking about this earlier in terms, and we love asking everybody that question, how you get into logistics, because I feel like it's one of those industries you don't expect to get into, and then it kind of just keeps you here forever. Where I was at DePaul going to school, and I was just working out with a guy. He's like, "What are you doing after college?" I'm like, "I have no idea at this point." He ended up getting a job at CH Robinson. He said, "You should apply." Applied, went through a couple of interviews, and then literally just the first job that I applied to, found myself starting there in a very similar type of situation.
Yeah, I got it. I applied for Global Trans. So I was flipping homes, and it was like the end of 06, early 07. And my dad's like, "I think you need to figure out something else to do." And I'm not sure if you're capitalized enough to keep going, as long as you want to go. And for me, I just applied online. Mike Leto called me. He didn't like me for his role. Andrew liked me for his role, hired me, and I've been in logistics ever since.
Yeah. And so when you started with AFN, what were you doing there?
I was a carrier sales rep. So actually, this was interesting. I was not a carrier sales rep. I wasn't even allowed to make outbound calls. I was a phone answer. So I went to 4 years of school. I read all this philosophy. I thought I had a high IQ. And I'm sitting there answering phone calls and dispatching drivers. So I'm sitting there, and this is like my fourth day, and I'm talking to 100 drivers a day, and I'm dispatching them. And remember, for my MapQuest days, I'm not really that good at directions. So I figured that I had to get out of this dispatch as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And so I was sitting at the time next to this guy named Mark Robbins, he's a 2,000 load book a month rep at Global Trans still. He's fantastic, really a brilliant carrier rep.
Yeah.
And I sat next to him, and I just watched everything he did. And then behind me, I had Mike Hamill, who is at Highway now. He was a tremendous leader and manager. Who helped me navigate through my first couple months. And they built a great ecosystem at AFN. Mike Nervick and Ryan Dobby, who's no longer here, they taught a lot of people. They made a lot of people better. And they sort of took what Paul Loeb did and created another generation of freight operators.
Yeah. I think that is one of the things that separates a lot of the people in our space are the ones that take it upon themselves to either find mentors in this space to really learn from, but also just take it upon yourself to do the job. It was a very similar experience, at least from my end, where, 4-year degree and went in, and then I was doing something very similar. I was an order taker, filling out sheets online and just making sure that things were moving seamlessly. But I was like, how can I continue and actually further progress my career? So actually, funny enough, there's one of my former mentors from Robinson is here. His son just got accepted to Boulder, so I'm going to go meet up with him a little bit later. I get to catch up with him. But also it was just about me then sitting there and saying, I need to go out and actively make cold calls. I need to start building a book of business outside of the normal time that I'm supposed to be working. And I feel like that's tends to lead to success in the space.
Are you talking about Ray Black?
Yeah, Ray Blackwell. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. He's up here. Yeah.
So Coleman, it's the people that understand, and it sounds like you had that moment. No one's coming to save you.
Yep.
You're sitting in that desk. You're 22. You're 44. You're me. You're a CEO.
Yeah.
No one's coming to save you.
Yep.
You need to work and you need to execute.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, and especially being in our seats now when we're talking people through their careers. I'd say that that's a great thing to reiterate to everybody, because traditionally, right, you can climb the corporate ladder and do whatever it is. But even then, you still have to go above and beyond and make sure that you're getting recognized, not necessarily just staying in your silo. Right?
Yeah, we talk about careers, we talk about parenting or managing in business.
Yeah.
Teaching your team, teaching your kids how to advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
That is the skill. Be relentless, but how do we advocate for ourselves? You could be the best operator, but if you're not advocating to your manager, it's really hard to achieve upward mobility.
Yeah.
So
at AFN, like, how did you continue to advocate for yourself, or maybe become an intrapreneur?
So great. I love the word intrapreneur because I think that there's a lot of talented people out there that have built businesses inside of businesses. And that was my first taste. It was called the CCC, Critical Conversion concept, which was, I believed at the time that there was this opportunity to convert over-the-road freight to intermodal. And this was before people were really doing that. And I had a wonderful manager, Mike Hamill, who said, go and build a business plan and do that and start booking intermodal loads. So figuring out, at the time, it was just mode diversification. So how that can relate to today, it's just figuring out different avenues of revenue generation, challenging that, trying to understand, where you can add value to your customers. In this case, it was finding a more cost-efficient way to ship their freight via intermodal.
So did you build out that product for AFN then?
So I built it out for AFN. It was small. I actually brought to them the thesis that we needed to buy an IMC.
Yeah.
This is 2005. I'm 23, and I said, we have to buy an IMC.
Yeah.
That's the only way to get big in intermodal. And a year later, actually, Coyote did buy an IMC, and they moved that direction. We never did. AFN was a tremendous company, ended up exiting to Global Trans years later. But that was my first taste of how do you build something inside of a company, and how do you go from 0 intermodal loads to making it a multi-million-dollar business unit?
Yeah. So you were at AFN for, what was it, 5?
So I was there for 30 months.
Okay.
I actually never would have left, but businesses, as you know, commission structures change in the logistics sector. If you're a leader, you should definitely think before you change commission structures. And it's just very easy. As a young operator, my commission changed, and I walked out the next day and had the opportunity to start load delivered logistics with my former camp counselor.
Wow.
So I was 7 years old. I went to this camp and had a tremendous counselor named John Michaelon. His family was an owner in the Chicago Bulls, and we started the company in 2008, and that was how Load Delivered launched.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Obviously, it is wild how if you cut commissions or change commission structures, there's an exodus. I sell computers at IBM. They changed it 5 times in 2.5 years. Everybody left. And it was like, here's the new commission plan, right? And it's like, you're going to make more money. It's like, okay, I have to sell twice as much to make a little less than before. I mean, they can spin any way they want, but you're going to leave if you're a good salesperson.
Well, what do you think about commission plans in freight, right? Especially with AI. How are operators going to think about commission reps versus AI reps in the future?
Yeah. Man, that's such a loaded question. I think it's going to change all the time. I think that if you're looking at an AI rep, I don't think that there's going to be any commission that's associated with it, obviously because it's not an actual human being doing it. I don't think that we're necessarily either at a point now or in the future to where something in AI is going to be sophisticated enough to go through an enterprise sell. I think that you're always going to have somebody associated with it. But to your point, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a lesser of a commission because AI is involved in some way, shape, or form. So theoretically, sales reps can go out and do more with it and hopefully recoup some of that money.
Yeah, maybe contrarianly, if a person can do 25 loads a day, but now they can do 1,200 loads a day, maybe the commission is through the roof where the AI has been able to help them get there.
Yeah.
How do you approach it? Or how do you think the brokerage partner?
So I think Tim Barton, for instance, as a good example, building a company that really is built for the customer relationship person.
Yeah.
So if you look at the freight brokerages in general, and Tim built freightquote.com, which was tremendously successful, sold to C.H. Robinson. You looked at Paul Loeb, you look at Jeff Silver, they all built these big brokerages. And then you look at the model that actually works today. Mm-hmm. The most profitable brokerages right now are cradle to grave.
Really?
You need to be able to operate on both sides. And so where I see technology coming in is it's going to empower that person with customer relationships to book freight, operate freight autonomously, versus they used to have to depend on a carrier rep, on an operations rep, on a finance person. I think that will evolve a little bit. And I think, some of your clients are ahead of that curve. We'll probably see more of that model in the near future.
Interesting. I know that was, and I'm sure you experienced this at AFN as well. That was one of the most frustrating part of the jobs from a buy-sell model is I land a bunch of freight and then I have to rely on other people that might not necessarily care as much as I do to make sure that everything moves seamlessly. So having the control, I 100% can see the value in that.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because you look at maybe the last large one was maybe Access America that sold to Coyote, and then they had some challenges to be able to convert everybody over to a buy-sell model.
Yeah. Backtracking actually to when you started Load Delivered, that was a super interesting take when you were talking about how you wanted to start it with the former camp counselor. What was his name again?
John Michaelon.
John Michaelon. Where did that come from? Did you just leave one day at AFN and said, I need to call this guy up? Or what was the thought process to actually getting it started?
So, backing up, actually, John was one of the seed founders for D&D Express, which was started by Danny Zamos. John sold that to Paul Loeb, and that was how Paul started Command Transportation, which later sold for $420 million to Echo Global. And so he had some experience early on building, and John and I just thought we could build something better and bigger and with a little more technology in it.
Did you take any investment to start the business, or was it bootstrapped?
John was the money behind it, but I consider it was pretty bootstrapped. We did not scale with institutional capital. And at the time, we were battling institutional capital.
Yeah.
So when Warburg Pincus started to build out Coyote, and we go back to that model, that was not a profitable model. If you look at Coyote, they did not make money with the exception of $90 million in EBITDA the year they were able to exit for $1.8 billion to UPS. So that model never produced a lot of money, which is interesting because you have the Coyote model, and then people from Coyote got sucked into Convoy or to Uber Freight or other digital models, and now they're getting sucked into these AI companies. So you have people that have never made money in freight, that their careers have been subsidized by 3 or 4 different companies, private equity or VC, and these companies have never materialized into profitable entities. So it's interesting to see how the freight game has evolved. That said, we're really early on in this next cycle.
Yeah. And we work with founders all the time. You're obviously a multiple time founder. What was the first day like of just getting Load Delivered started?
So the silence is the most interesting part of a startup, and no one talks about this. You don't have any inbound emails. And so just think about, we all are in the business, and we have these Slacks coming in and emails coming in and phone calls. No one calls you.
Yeah.
No one emails you. And so that's always interesting and a lonely moment, but that's part of the embracing is that lonely moment. I call it the sadness, the loneliness that nobody notices. And that's when entrepreneurs really start to innovate. I find, at least.
Yeah. And I would say that arguably probably one of the worst times to start a business, at least before 2009, just with everything that was going on in the economy. But you obviously found a large amount of success really since you started, especially over that 4-year period, give or take. What was that like?
So when we started, it was actually Bear Stearns had just basically collapsed. The economy was in disarray. And it's easier now because I was young. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a family. I wasn't as knowledgeable about macroeconomics situation, and we turned off any news. There was no news allowed in our office.
Wow.
Because it was so negative, and the energy that was going on in 2008. I said, if we want to win, we need to turn off the news and we need to focus internally. We can only control what goes on in this office. And we are in an industry where there's a lot of activity in motion. There's trucks. We need to focus internally. And that's what we did for literally the next 11 years.
The first 4 or 5 years, though, I mean, it really worked turning the news off, because I think, what was your growth like, over 975% or something?
We were in Inc. 500, which is really exciting. We were 11th fastest growing company in Chicago. So we hit that sort of accelerator button. I think it was partially good timing, partially a fantastic team. And then a lot of it was just great customer support. And we focused on customers. And I know that's the ethos of talent solvers, but it's all about the customers.
Yeah.
And I think specifically in brokerage, if you can really lean into the customer service in that 2008 to 2012 timeframe, it was a lot easier to grow. Versus today, when you think about scaling, there's just a lot of different variables that go into the ability to scale and scale profitably.
So growing that much in your late 20s, did ego ever come into it? Do you have to check your ego at the door? I mean, it must have been pretty empowering.
So I had a great team. And if you have a great team, they'll check your ego. And so I think that's important. Surrounding yourself with mentors and advisors, I think, is critical. And also recognizing, going back to that philosophy is I know that I don't know. And so I think that if you constantly are trying to learn and grow, you don't get sort of pulled into thinking that you're bigger than you are.
Yeah. Was there ever a point in time of running low delivery over those 10 years where I might go out of business tomorrow?
Twice.
Really?
There was 2 times where essentially a lot of brokerages run negative working capital businesses. So it's dollar in, dollar out. And when you scale too fast and the market flips, very hard to recover from that. So your debt to equity ratio flips. The bank typically are not very excited when you're in that situation. So there was 2 times, we were a big company and you have to pay yourself zero. You have to figure out how to operate differently. And that's what prepared me for this evolution. I had to go from 184 people to 77. Right. And people don't hear about that in Inc. magazine or in Cranes, but we had to systematically create operational leverage in our business because the market compressed. And so when I talked to operators over the past couple of years, I understood the pain they're going through. A lot are still in that sort of right now in this market, but hopefully in the next couple months, they'll be able to work themselves out.
I think that's one of the important things to understand from an entrepreneurial journey is that everybody always talks about the good, right?
The wins.
Yeah, exactly. Making the Inc. 500 and all that. But there are inevitably downtimes, again, when you're having to scale or drop headcount by 50%. But I think all of everything that you were just talking about, and especially when the economy was rough, talking about how we can control what's in our 4 walls, that speaks a lot to the culture that you had built there. And again, making sure that as you're reducing headcount, you're still keeping people on board and they're still motivated. Describe the kind of the importance of the culture that you built there in terms of getting to the success that you wanted, and just kind of how you did that.
I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that.
I think there's one cool thing you did from a culture perspective that I learned when I first met you was that maybe I'm not sure if it was once a month or every other Friday, you'd have somebody come in and maybe do nails for the ladies that worked in the office. I remember it.
That was definitely. So here was the best advice I got from a leader. He was a CFO of 5 publicly traded companies. He was the one that he said, he's like, you are going to need to change your business model, and you could either take a hatchet or you could take an axe. And I'll help you do either, but we're going to have to change the dynamics of this business. And so during that time when we had to decrease the amount of people, he said, the people on your team, you need to continue to take care of. You need to make sure they're paid well. You need to make sure that everything that you were giving them prior to doing some layoffs, that you can continue that. And so what we did is we rallied around the best people at the company. They stepped up. And in 2018, a lot of those leaders ended up doing really well upon the exit.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's good advice from your mentor.
Yeah. And can you elaborate on what the difference between an axe and a hatchet is? I'm assuming hatchet just a little bit slower in terms of how you're changing the business versus axe. You're just going in and changing everything right off the bat.
Yeah. So most first-time founders will always choose the hatchet when given the opportunity. I chose the hatchet. Yeah. Which was a great experience. The axe would be to make big decisions quickly and move swift. Everyone's always careful about culture and optics and what people think. No one cares.
Yeah.
What's important is that if you have fiduciary responsibility, you are making sure that you take care of your investors and your team. And that was always really important to me.
So I'm assuming your stance changed now. If you were having to do something over again from that drastic, you're taking the axe to it?
Absolutely.
Interesting. So started low delivered, obviously extremely successful. And then I believe it was in 2013, started and founded a company called Logistical Labs. Where did that come from? What was the goal behind it in working with both of them in tandem?
So Logistical Labs was created because we just could not compete with C.H. Robinson Coyote. I was actually here at White Wave Foods, Jake Kilgore, really good guy, see him at the Denver Transportation Club.
Yeah.
We were at White Wave in Broomfield, Colorado, and he was talking about the RFP. Mm-hmm. And I recognized that we did not have the capabilities to take data and do quote effectively. And so I spent the next year of my life researching pricing and how we could price better, existing systems that worked, and there were no systems that were out there. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Lithuania. I took, whatever I had in my 401k, it was a couple $100,000, went to Lithuania, and we launched Logistical Labs. The first customer was load delivered, and it was pricing and modal optimization. How could we price more accurately with using algorithms, big data, different sources, bring that in and push out prices fast to Fortune 500. So it worked.
Yeah.
And it worked so well that over the next couple of years, we had billion-dollar companies, Werner, CRST, US Express, that embraced the technology and started to use it to grow their brokerages from small brokerages to billion-dollar companies.
Was there any concern from those customers that load delivered had some of their data?
So it's, I take a lot of pride in this and, starting this AI company, when we think about data and the importance of trust, we had 68 customers' data that was all in Logistical Labs. We never looked at it once.
That's
and amazing. The thesis was eventually I wanted to build this exchange, wanted to build this consortium, believed that this group of 65 companies could do better together. In 2018, we sold both companies, Load Delivered and Logistical Labs, before we got to that vision. But absolutely, people were concerned about sharing data.
Yeah.
They thought I was crazy. They said, wait, you think you can help us price better, but you need us to give you your data. Fast forward 12, 13 years later, it's very normal to exchange data so that people can help you price or help you find trucks. And so, breaking down some of those barriers early on was difficult. I remember getting a cease and desist from DAT, a cease and desist from Truck Stop, because they never had anyone hit their system that many times for rating.
Yeah.
And this is like before real APIs even existed. And so they're like, how could you potentially hit it that many times? And said we need the data to be able to help sub-billion-dollar brokers price. And yeah.
Man, I can't even imagine running one company. I mean, kudos to obviously you and then you for founding your own companies. But what was that like running two at the same time?
So I had an amazing Chris Ricciardi, who is the COO, president, chief product officer, now has a big role at Capstone. He really ran that company and took the vision and executed. So I'll give him all that credit, him and the team over there. Yeah.
Well, we'll still give you some of the credit, that's for sure. Obviously well-deserved, but I think that goes back to some of the things that we were talking about and the importance of team and building the right team. So Load Delivered, Logistical Labs, both doing extremely well. And then you alluded to it already, but in 2018 went through an acquisition. Were you actively seeking something? Did something come to you? What kind of spurred that?
So in 2015, you saw Command Transportation and Coyote hit the bid.
Yep.
So 2014 was a hype cycle, really good business. And you saw those leaders had a lot of experience and they knew it was time to sell. So having been brought up in the Chicago freight brokerage ecosystem, I think it's important to respect and look at what your elders are doing. I saw what they did. And when the market tanked in 2016, I knew that as soon as the market sort of changed, we needed to be in a position to exit. And partially it was because of the compression that was coming in from Uber Freight, Convoy, some of the digital brokerages. They were playing with institutional capital and they were basically buying market share at negative margin. And so I was running a profitable freight brokerage. We were doing 8 or 9 million in EBITDA. And I just saw that I was always told never be in a fight with someone that is a little irrational. And I felt that we were there was just an opportunity to exit, move on, and continue to innovate elsewhere.
So like finding an acquirer for your business, is it almost like a sales process, like obtaining like venture capital, or like how do you go about finding suitors?
So the best companies don't get sold, they get bought.
Interesting.
And I think that was a big part of my evolution. We had gone to market in 2014 or 2015, and just when you go and try to sell a company, it doesn't work.
Interesting.
You need to build a great organization, something that'll last, something that will live, for many years beyond. That was actually something I learned from mentors early on. It was not just how good of a company you can build, but how many years after you leave will it be around?
Interesting.
And, I think, there's talk about legacy. I don't really necessarily believe in legacy, but I believe in whatever you do, it should have a lasting positive impact.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, fast forward to today, I think I saw a picture on LinkedIn where you had a party with your former Load Delivered teammates.
It's I have a big place in my heart for Load Delivered, for the team out there, and it's the relationships that you create in this industry and in business in general are tremendous. I know KJ, you have a lot of great industry friends, and that's part of the fun.
It is fun.
And I want to talk about once that acquisition or the sell actually happened, but I think that's something else that's interesting from an entrepreneurial standpoint. You were talking about building a business and something that is going to stay there even when you decide to depart, whatever it is. Did you start Load Delivered and then potentially Logistical Labs with the goal in mind of, I know I'm going to sell this one day? Or were you going into it as, I'm just going to build a business and then see what happens?
I wanted to be a $1 billion company. I wanted to be a top 10 freight broker. I was convinced in my early 20s that was going to happen. But I think it was also important to recognize your strengths, recognize where you need to grow as an individual. I wanted to be a CEO of $1 billion company, and I thought the best way would be to sell into that company. Mm-hmm. The CEO of Capstone is tremendous. Ended up selling the company to HIG Capital a year after he bought Load Delivered. So Capstone's doing great, but that was part of it. Is I wanted to learn what it was like to be an executive at $1 billion company versus a founder at $100+ million company.
Yeah. Then, with that in mind, when the sell actually happened, then you got into venture capital, correct?
So, as most founders do, you sell your company, you've worked so hard, and you're trying to figure out exactly what the next steps were. And so investing and being an angel investor in the sector was just a very logical progression. And yeah, over the course of 7 years, we've invested in now 8 Freight Tech 25 companies, 1 IPO, 3 unicorns, and hopefully more in the near future.
And post-sale, you also kind of came full circle and moved back to Colorado.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in front of the computer screen for 11 years building Load Delivered. When you love your business, you love what you do, you can be a little obsessive compulsive about it. And I thought it was important to go from 14, 15 hours a day in front of the computer screen to get back to my roots. I always wanted to build a family in Colorado. When I graduated CU, there was no job opportunity, had to move back to Chicago. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as I had the opportunity to move back here, I did. And I try to spend a lot of time outdoors and in the nature.
Yeah, so that was at post 18 going in 19?
So that was I was at Capstone for 12 months and 1 day after the exit.
Oh, wow.
I thought it was very important to transition my leadership team. I wanted all of them to have a really strong role at the new entity. So that was about 2019 before COVID. We moved out here, and that's when we started to build out the venture firm.
Having that experience and then going into the venture firm, how did selling your business and then being part of that affect how you evaluated companies when you're investing in them?
So being an operator, you can afford to be very emotional. Being an investor, you cannot be emotional. I think that's the biggest difference, and that's what I learned. Also, people don't talk about all the losers that the companies that maybe didn't do as well. and the losses. And I think that's also, it sounds cliche, but you do learn more from the losses sometimes than the winners. And that's part of life.
But I would say along the way as well, like getting deep into COVID, you started another transportation business or you bought one.
So I loved being out in the outdoors, and the thought was we built a company called Romeo, and we were building camper vans, and then we were renting camper vans out, and we were trying to curate an experience for people during COVID where they could go to the mountains, rent a camper van, and enjoy life. What we found during that business was building. So there's building technology and then there's building vehicles. It was a tremendous experience building the vehicles. But what I realized, I didn't love building hard assets. I don't love owning hard assets unless it's real estate. And so what we decided to do, we built 25 vehicles. We sold all 25 vehicles. And we started buying industrial real estate to build and store the vehicles. And we recognized that business was going to be much more profitable, industrial outdoor storage, than the van business. So we shut the van business down. Now we have an industrial outdoor storage business, large property, 10 acres in Dacono, Colorado, and then 12 different facilities across the country, ranging from like Alabama up to Massachusetts.
So if you like scroll your LinkedIn profile, you can see Go Romeo on there. For me, how I got exposed to it, when I ran global talent acquisition at Project 44, it was a perk for the employees during COVID. People would you could set up time, right? You could say, I want to go and have it for like this week, and I'm going to go to Wyoming and work remote. So it was a perk for at least a year at Project 44. That's how I got exposed to it.
And we had great feedback. Like, people loved renting those vehicles. They were in front of computers all the time, and then they'd get to go in a Romeo and roam all over the country. And I think as AI becomes more prevalent, we're going to see more people want to get outside, get outdoors, have real experiences. I think we're seeing that in the economy already, where people they want to embrace nature versus just being in front of the computer.
Well, all three of us live in Colorado, raising families in Colorado. I completely agree.
Oh, yeah.
They were ahead of the game with that.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of people that are starting to experience that and making sure that they're getting more than just what's outside of the four walls at work or something like that. I made a very similar transition to you, where we were in Chicago up until 2019, moved out here at the same time because we knew that we wanted to have a little bit more of that outdoors exposure. Absolutely love Chicago. I personally think it's the best city in the world that I've been to, but ready for a little bit extracurriculars outside of just downtown. So it's super important for that. I did want to circle back really quick. I mean, I guess you were still in venture while you were doing Go Romeo. One of the things that I think is super interesting, and if you had to pick between the two, if you're investing in a company, what's more important? Is it the jockey or the horse? And again, what I mean by that is it the founder or is it the idea behind that founder?
The standard commentary is it's all about the founder.
Yeah.
And I do agree with that. But there's a combination of founder and the timing in the sector that they're in.
Yeah.
And so a combination of founder and timing and what they're working on and what's behind that? What is going to help be like the impetus to take that from a normal business to something greater? Highway is a great example. So I was one of the first checks into Highway, wonderful company helping to fight freight fraud in the logistics sector. And it was, so one is investing in founders that are trying to like build the future, not build for today, I think is really important. Highway was one of those situations where he was trying to build for the future. But what they had happen, not just a great jockey, not just a great idea, they had something happen during that. There was more fraud that started to occur in the industry, and the largest competitor had some technical difficulties. And so they had lightning, and they were able to go from 0 to 1,250 customers and raise a really big round from FTV and are doing fantastic. And so I think it's a combination of the jockey. I think the idea is important, but I think there has to be some sort of tailwind behind it in this day and age.
That makes sense. And so venture started Go Romeo, and I think that brings us to what you're doing today, right? You wanted to get back in the game. What made you want to start another company?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because, I mean, young children, 2 young boys at the time, is it that you couldn't pass up the opportunity how big AI is going to be? It was you wanted the action. It was serving customers. It was helping brokerages. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to think through to decide to get into an arms race, really.
Yeah, when you are an entrepreneur, you get pulled. You have this pull, and it's not logical. It doesn't always feel great, but something is just telling you that you have to get in the game and innovate and make a difference and an impact. And I know KJ, you like to you do martial arts, so I was training with a UFC fighter. I was running up mountains. I was trying to push my body, I think, because I wasn't in the business game at the level I wanted. And I was actually training with my UFC fighter. I was training for a match, and I got punched really hard. And my teeth like flew out of my mouth. And I went home to my wife, and I'd been reading a lot about AI. And she's like, "Are you sure you don't want to go back into business or do something else?"
Yeah, where you can keep your teeth intact.
Where you can keep your teeth. And so I thought AI would be a lot safer place, but it was that pull. It didn't matter how far I ran up a mountain or how hard I got punched. I wanted to innovate in logistics.
Punched or choked, it's really humbling.
Yeah. And so I think that is a testament to the real founders and entrepreneurs that are out there. I think that you can find somebody that wants to start a business, and whether it goes well or doesn't, they're like, okay, I did it once, I can just go back into corporate America. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but every single founder that I've ever talked to, or a real entrepreneur, has said that exact same thing. There's that itch of, okay, I had a success, whether it was an acquisition or sell, but I can't just sit here and not do anything and wait on the sidelines.
There's wiring in the brain.
Yeah. So you were talking about the AI space. Why did you decide to start Envoy? Was it, again, you saw everything that's going on with AI, this is the next wave? Was it just the timing of things? What really kind of drew this out?
So part of it was I was getting pulled in by my friends to look at the V1 applications, and they wanted to see what I thought. And I started to look at the logistics companies that were starting to come out in that time frame, and I thought I could do it better.
Yeah.
And I thought there was a different way. And so we started building this AI orchestration. We started thinking about the forward deployed engineer model, and we just didn't believe that it was correct. We thought it was wrong. And I mentioned this earlier. It's if you have large contracts, if you're Palantir and you're innovating for a large Army contract that's 10 years, 5 years, great. You can send in an FD, you can look at the SOP, but freight is in constant motion.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that model will compound over time. I think it's a results outcomes-based model that AI companies are going to need to produce. It's going to look closer to what a BPO looks like today. And that's what's interesting. It's this blending. I'm calling it LAS. It's a blending of logistics and services.
Yeah.
So it's not technology, logistics services and technology. It's not SaaS. It's not a brokerage. It's going to be LAS. And we're starting to see some V1 companies come out. I think we'll see more in the next several months.
I really think you have a unique lens, having built a brokerage and a pricing tool, and then coming on the AI side, where I think some of the other startups in the space, the version 1 you're talking about, they're from outside the industry, some of them.
And you know, in certain respects, that's advantage. That can be an advantage.
Yeah, absolutely, fresh ideas.
But I'm a believer: experience teaches wisdom, and wisdom creates trust. I think that innovation in our industry needs to happen from inside the industry. It's not going to happen from outside of the industry. And so, just a different style. I love competing as part of the fun in business. So I have a lot of respect for all those companies. We talk, all the founders, and it's healthy competition.
Is there anything specific, and I know we were talking about the hatchet and the axe before, is there anything specific that you feel like you learned from Load Delivered, from Logistical Labs, from your venture time, that you're taking into this, Envoy, of making sure that you do this or don't do this as you continue and scale things?
I think part of it is everyone trying to be the CEO I always wanted to be, the founder I always wanted to be in my 20s. A little less, I think it's hard everyone has this idea of how they should operate a business. And my goal this time around is to do exactly what I want and do it quickly.
Yeah.
Making decisions faster. And again, just building a great team around myself and co-founder.
Yeah. As also being somebody that's entrenched in AI every day, I feel like you can talk to some people and some others that say that this is AI of the future. We're super far along with this. A lot of other people are saying we're just scratching the surface. Where do you think that we're at in the AI journey of things?
I think it's early. I think if you believe that super intelligence will happen in the next couple of years, then we're early. There's this rhetoric in San Francisco that like all white collar jobs will die and be eradicated, and you should basically go learn how to be an HVAC or do something in the services. Let's say that's true. The same way that driverless cars were true.
Yeah.
It's always going to take 2 to 3 times longer than people think. Now, it might be a little accelerated in this hype cycle with AI, tremendous amount of money being poured into data centers.
Yeah.
Data centers will help compute. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for things to move fast, but not in logistics.
What is super intelligence?
You're going to have to ask the folks at Stanford. They're working on super intelligence, which is, essentially we're thinking about multi-channel agents talking to agents and passing along. Super intelligence is
the
next step.
A whole nother ballgame.
Yeah, we're going to reach the singularity or not. But to get back to your point about it takes longer. We heard the hype from whether it was Uber Freight or Uber about autonomous trucks. I think last summer you and I got our first Waymo.
Yeah.
So I think in logistics and transportation, also when you're building like assets they have to move, it does take longer. There's also like the proof of concept of making sure like there's not injuries or deaths or things like that. And I think there's some proof out there now with full service driving cars, like the percentage it's way safer to be in them.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting how it plays out. So I guess pivot to a question. If we're getting close to super intelligence, you have a young daughter, my daughter's a little bit older, you have young boys, what is the job market or what's going to be available in 10 or 15 years when we look at robotics and AI coming together? I mean, it's wild.
It's the type of question that I don't think anyone really knows the answer.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to wake up and do you just move to the mountains, deep in the mountains, and I think it's more like taking a step back and just being like, where are we at as a society? What are we doing as a society? And we're spending a lot of time like this.
Yeah.
On our phone. A lot of time like this. And forget about what happens in 15 years. What's going to happen when our kids see us like all just walking around like this on our phones or communicating like this versus spending more time sort of one-on-one with them? And so I think first it's like detaching from technology. And then second, teach your kids how to be relentless, teach them how to be problem solvers. I think those that's really important, but we don't know if there's, lawyers, I don't know, doctors, sure, we'll need doctors, but will they have a different role?
Yeah.
Freight brokers definitely will have a different role.
Yeah.
World's changing fast, and it's on us to navigate through it with our children.
Yeah. It's funny that you said freight brokers, because that was one of the things that as we get to the tail end of the conversation, I was very curious if you had an opinion on, do you think freight brokerages are still going to be a thing in 10, 20 years?
So when I was growing up, there were stockbrokers, and now there's Robinhood.
Yeah.
Stockbrokers took a couple points of every trade. Robinhood, you can make as many trades as you want. And just think about that construct. And I think there are some parallels to freight brokerage. That said, stocks aren't in motion and trucks are. And so it will never go Robinhood, but freight brokerage will feel very different in the next cycle.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
That should be in Chicago, yeah.
Yep. And as we wrap things up, what we always love to do is give you the mic, a 45-second, a minute, however long you want to go for. Talk to us about anything that you feel like anybody that's watching the Founders Lounge didn't get insights to. Talk about Envoy. Talk about what you're excited about in this space. Really open mic time for you.
Open mic.
Yeah. If anything.
So, I used to be a rapper. And no, I was not.
Oh, I was going to say,
I didn't know you fought UFC, that's
no, but I'll give you this. This is a random fact. So, back in the day, before there was reality TV, there was documentaries. So I was on one of the first reality TVs for high school kids in Chicago, Illinois in 2000. It was called American High. It was on Fox TV. Didn't go so well, so we later got booted to PBS. But yeah, that was my entry into being in front of the camera.
Wow.
I was 20 years old and getting filmed every day in my senior year in high school.
Wow.
That's pretty interesting. Now, and it's not just being filmed, but it's also, I think we were setting up, you were talking about your voice. What was it about JB Hunt you were able to obtain some business?
Oh, yeah.
So
we were kind of chopping up to start out.
So what made my career, I'll give a shout out to Lori Patrick, who's still at JB Hunt today. I was 22 years old. I wanted so badly to work with JB Hunt. And I finally, on the night shift, found a way to get access to some of their trucks. Called back the next day. They worked with us. And I was so proud of myself for navigating using my brain, only to find out a month later the only reason she let me in and started working because she thought I had a nice voice. And so that was really deflated me.
But whatever gets it done, you still got it done in the end, which is good. Well, I think that we have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, really getting a peek behind the scenes of successes, failures, really understanding you as a person, and wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to come down here, hang out with us in our studio, and let us grill you for a little bit.
Thanks, Coleman. Thanks, KJ. and appreciate all you and Talent Solvers does for me in the logistics community. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Right on.